Thank you for being a part of our online service and our live service. And I had a good day. This was originally supposed to be the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, of the national meeting of the Baptist Bible Fellowship International. And that was canceled live, and everything was put online. So Monday from 1 o'clock to 5 o'clock, Tuesday from 1 o'clock to 5 o'clock, and today from 1 to 5, that meeting took place totally live, online, and some of it was pre-recorded, of course, but they put it all together, and I am so excited about what I saw today. If you happen to have, and I know that some of you have just so much time, if you happen to have about 4 hours, you ought to watch the video on YouTube that was put on today. You can also watch parts of it and excerpts of it. But it was Missions Day. And this is the day that new missionaries come in and we're introduced to them, and they'd already been approved because we weren't not able to do that live. We did that last week in Zoom meetings, and they presented their testimonies this week. And then today in the missions meeting, they talked about what the missions office does and all the different parts of what the mission office does. And they do so much more than most people have any idea or realize. And they've really diversified a lot of the things that they do. They have a program called WIN, W-I-N, World Initiative Network. And that's where people can go to the mission field and use the talents that God has given them. Say someone is at a point, they're a teacher and they want to teach on the mission field, or they're a doctor, or they have some type of professional skill, maybe even in construction, and they can help support themselves, but they're going to go to the mission field and help the missionaries and with what's happening. They also have a program called Beyond Borders that helps with mission trips and getting people to the mission field as well, and information for that. But then they do all of the things that help us to know what's going on in our world. So today I saw a lot of different videos, and some of those through time we're going to show you here at the church as well, about what needs to happen in Europe, what needs to happen in South America, what needs to happen in these different areas of the world, and why we need to be faithful to continue to do what God has called us to do in getting that mission out. And then they had testimonies from a lot of missionaries, some of them are ones that we support. Randall Fernandez gave a testimony today, and we know that he's in Pakistan. We also have missionaries that were giving testimonies. George DeMakis gave a fiery testimony today, as his always are, and you might enjoy watching that. Scott Merritt, who is one of our missionaries, gave a testimony, and so just there's several there. I know there were at least 4 or 5 that we support as a church that gave testimonies throughout the day. And if you have a chance to go on and see all of that, I know it would be a blessing to you. If you have Facebook, I did put a link to it on my Facebook page. And again, it's almost 4 hours long, but it went pretty quickly, I thought. But if you have an opportunity to even watch parts of that, you could kind of fast forward and say, oh, I see George, and watch George if you want to. But I think that it would really be something that would encourage you in what's happening for missions, and also prepare our heart for next month at our Faith Promise Missions Conference. Continue to pray that everyone would be healthy and safe as we move towards that goal. And because we're going to have, this year the conference is going to be a little bit different. We don't get to have the banquets and all of those kind of things and some of the meetings that we have together. But our speakers that are going to be here, I am thrilled about. You're really going to enjoy the ones that are here. That information's already on our webpage. We'll have a Sunday morning, and we'll have multiple services just like we are now. We'll have a Monday night, a Tuesday night, a Wednesday night, and then multiple services the next Sunday. And I hope you'll make plans to be a part of all of that. And promoting missions, we also have tonight one of our longtime missionaries, Oliver Williams, with us, missionary to Peru. And he's going to share with us what has been happening there and what they've done in the past and what the plans are for the future, and tell you about the school. Many of you remember all the videos that we saw online from the flood and all the buildings that were destroyed. They're going to give us an update on that. And I'm just thrilled that they're here tonight. Just in case you forgot, and this is also the parents of Mark and Amy Pointer. and the parents also of the Lyles, David Lyles and Tanya. And they claim David because I even heard him mention his name a couple of times, but also their daughter Tanya. But we're thrilled to death that they're here tonight. What we're going to do first is we're going to start off with their video. And then after that video, he's going to come up. And we're thrilled that you're here. Thanks for being here tonight. So just a disclaimer while we're kind of waiting on that video, Don's doing a lot of extra hands tonight. He's doing the sound, the video, and also our online stuff all at the same time because we have some guys that are out of town and some guys that are not able to be here tonight. And so we're ready for you. It's not going to happen? Okay, we'll reload that video and you can come ahead. And do you need another thumb drive? Okay, I'll take that thumb drive.
Good. It's so very good to be here. I hope that video works. We're planning on it and seeing it. I'm going to ask my wife to come say a word of testimony. She doesn't preach except at home, and she'll give her an opportunity.
Good evening, and it's so good to be here. It's been a long time since we have been here, and as missionaries, we always enjoy coming here as visitors when Mark and Amy were here, and also my sister, Shara Piercy, when we would visit. But I love this church, and I love this church not because of what all you've done for us, even though you've done a lot. I love this church because of its heart for missions. This church is known to have a heart for missions, and we so much appreciate that. If I could sit down and talk with you for a while, oh, the stories I could tell about the way that this church has done things that have affected our life and our ministry. And so let me take this opportunity to tell you, thank you. Don't stop doing what you've been doing because it's wonderful.
Okay. You ready? Okay, good. We are Oliver and Gloria Williams, Baptist Bible Fellowship missionaries to Peru for over 52 years.
Our home has always been in the sprawling city of Lima with a population of over 10 million.
After a year of debutation and a year of language study in Mexico, we arrived in Lima in June of 1971. Our focus has always been the establishing of churches and preparing workers for those churches. We have established 5 churches in metropolitan Lima and 3 more across the Andes in the central jungle towns of San Ramon, La Merced, and Pichinaki.
Our present ministry is at Baptist Bible Seminary in Lima, where we've worked since 1972.
Our purpose at the seminary is to prepare pastors, missionaries, and Christian school teachers who will start more churches and will follow God's call to wherever He leads them. The seminary annually sponsors 2 activities to promote fellowship among our churches. For 37 years, we have had a 5-week soccer tournament with as many as 32 churches participating. On November the 1st, which is a national holiday, we have a day-long activity for young people emphasizing missions. The day includes a fellowship-wide Bible quiz, 2 sermons challenging our young people to dedicate their lives to serve the Lord, and in the afternoon we have a volleyball tournament. As many as 700 young people attend this activity every year.
In October every year, the graduating seniors go on a missions trip to help a church in the interior of the country. One of the purposes of this trip is to help them see the need of establishing more churches in the interior.
In March of 2017, the seminary was flooded by the Chion River. The shallow water river flows down from the Andes Mountains and passes about 100 yards behind the seminary. In March of 2017, there were continual heavy rains in the Andes. One afternoon, something caused an obstruction in the rivers, sending a strong current flow against our side of the river. In less than 12 hours, the river had cut across the cornfield behind us, washed away 150 feet of our back wall, destroyed 3 buildings, and covered our water well for 2 weeks. Our graduates and pastors rallied to the cause, and classes at the seminary began on time in April. Gratefully, the Lord has provided to replace everything but the chapel building. Over the years, we have had more than 550 graduates from the seminary.
And there are graduates serving in more than 40 churches in the Lima metropolitan area.
And outside of Lima, we have graduates in the Upper Marañón River Basin, the jungle city of Iquitos and along the rivers, in Chiclayo, Cajamarca, Juan Guerra, Tarapoto, Huaraz, Paramonga, Barranca, Chancay, Perovillo, Chosica, Tarma, San Ramon, La Merced, Pichinaque, Satipo, Oxapampa, Villarrica, Ica, Andahuaylas, Ayacucho, Majes, Cusco, Pisac, and Puerto Maldonado.
We also have graduates in the United States, Brazil, Argentina, Bolivia, London, India, Guinea-Bissau, West Africa, and one going to Asia when the pandemic restrictions are over.
In 2015, on the 50th anniversary of the seminary, we received a Peruvian congressional recognition for 50 years of service in Peru. A declaration was read in Congress, and a reception was given for our students and professors in one of the congressional reception halls.
This year, we were ready to begin classes in April when the government went into a complete lockdown because of the pandemic. Our son-in-law, David Lyles, who works with us at the seminary, set up virtual platforms, and we completed a full semester in virtual online classes.
We have participated in summer camp ministry since arriving in Lima. For 46 years, we have had to rent facilities for our camps. For 30 years, we prayed and looked for land to buy. And in 2011, the Lord made it possible to buy 7 choice acres for our own camp.
In 2017, the Lord provided the funds to build the first stage of the camp, but construction was interrupted until October that year because of reconstruction at the seminary after the flood.
January the 1st in 2019, we began our camp program at Camp New Hope with our high school aged campers. There were 31 professions of faith in Christ that first week. Now we have a camp program for every age group in our churches. We still have 3 acres of land to develop. We're grateful for the 50 years God has given to us in Peru and for the wonderful pastors and churches that He's given us to work with. Would you consider coming and being a part of our team?
It excites me to see that. It makes me want to go home. Makes me want to go home. Well, we're grateful for your support for many years that you've been helping us, having a part in our ministry in Peru, and we're so grateful for your prayers and for the offerings that you send us. It makes it possible for us to be there and to have a part in that ministry that God's given to us there. Our main ministry is the camp, but first let me say a word about the virus that's going around, the COVID. Peru is number 1 as far as deaths per capita a few weeks ago. It's very strong there, we say. We have 10 million people in the city of Lima, And many of them work in the streets, selling in the markets, open markets and everything. And they were doing real good for the first couple of months. And then they let the people out to go to the markets. And then they started checking the vendors. And they found that 30 to 40% of the vendors in the markets were infected. And it is bad. We lost one of our graduates last week. It was a pastor who pastored with the Brethren Church now. And we've lost several people from our different congregations. But as you're praying for the work here, praying that God will take this thing away as He sees fit, that He would do also there in Peru. One good thing that has come out of the virus is our churches have learned to use the television, go online with their services. Before the COVID, we had 2 churches that were using Facebook and YouTube to present their messages and to preach the gospel. Now, all of our churches that I know of, I believe all of them are using Facebook and have their services every Sunday, and some of them all week long. One of our pastors has a Bible study every day. And we have Peruvians in about every country in the world, really. And they've been in contact with their family and so forth. And so the gospel is getting out in Spanish around the world. And there are a good response to the gospel being preached in this way. The government has shut down the churches, and the churches have not met since about the last week in March. And it looks like it's going to be that way maybe even until the end of the year. And we ask you to pray for our government. Right now they're trying to impeach the president, and they probably will. We have 5 living presidents. All 5 of them have been accused. One's in jail. One's been in jail with his wife for 8 or 9 months. Another one is in California waiting extradition. He spent, after he got out of the presidency, he spent $20 million, and they want to know where he got his $20 million. And it's that sort of a thing. And there's a lot of difficulty right now. We had new re-elections just a few months ago, and a lot of leftists went in, and they're causing a problem right now. But if you think about it, pray for the government as well down there. But our primary ministry is a Bible school, preparing workers for the ministry. It's been a blessing. It is a blessing, and God continues to bless that ministry. We have 4 different courses that we teach, and we are lined up with Louisiana Baptist University for a bachelor's degree there. And our greatest need in Peru is more workers and prepared workers. I was listening to your pastor pray a while ago for the conference and praying for more people to go from the church here to the mission field. And that is our prayer and our desire. Let me share with you that we pray for the young people to go, and we think that we should pray also for anybody that God chooses to go. We would like to see in Peru, we've had experience of having mature people that God would call, and they make great pastors there. Right now we're in 2nd semester at the seminary right now, there in Lima. And we have a couple that study. The man's name is Daniel. Daniel is 54 years of age. His wife is Graciela. They're members of one of our oldest church there in Peru. He grew up in the church through the youth department and everything, and he is one of the leaders of the church there also. I pastored that church for about 17 months in a transition period when they were without a pastor, when they were having some problems, and Daniel was one of the leading men that helped us there. But a few months ago, God called him to preach, and he went to see his pastor. He has a good pastor, a well-prepared pastor, and the pastor said, "Are you sure?" And the implication was, you're set up real good. I need you here. He didn't tell him that, but that was the implication. And he said, he was buying his home. He was more than halfway through paying for his home. It's an apartment complex. He has a good wife, 2 children. He is a construction foreman. And the pastor said, "Are you sure?" He said, yes, I'm sure." He said, "Well, what does your wife think?" And so he took his wife to see the pastor. And the pastor, when he called me, he said the wife was more excited about going to ministry than he was. And so they sold their apartment. They rented a cheaper place to live. They have organized their economy. They are both studying. The husband and wife are studying. And when he graduates, he'll be 58 years of age. And he will make a good pastor. And he will lead people to the Lord and build a church until the Lord takes him home. And when he goes home, he'll take a lot of people with him. He'll take a lot of people with him. And we need to pray that the Lord of the harvest will call out more young people and older people. We have one graduate from one of our churches. He was 68 when he came, 68 years of age. He worked independently. He sold construction material as a free agent sort of thing. But he was a good man, a good student. The only class that he failed was my Doctrine of the Holy Spirit class. And when I found that out, I felt bad about it, yeah. I mean, if they come at 68 and they pass all the other courses and you fail them. But anyway, he graduated. He finished. It wasn't a free ride. He made the grade. And of course, he's not going off to pastor somewhere, but there were some churches and some groups up in the mountains, way up in the Andes, south of Lima. And he would go back and forth up there teaching the gospel. He died a couple of years ago, but he served the Lord. At 71, 72, he graduated from the school and served the Lord directly for a few years in churches. So there may be someone here tonight that God's talking to, maybe. We can't call you. If we could call you, I would go ahead and do it. But it's God that calls. It's God that calls. And we don't want everybody to come to Peru, but half of you would be fine. Just half of you would come to Peru and help us. We'd be grateful. We would be thankful. Getting back to this, but the thrill of our life has been to go and to teach and to prepare workers to do the work, to start churches. By the way, one of our Peruvian pastors was on this afternoon about 1:30, 2 o'clock, Raul Vargas, and he'll be there if you look him up tomorrow. He'll mention the Bible school and he'll mention our youth camp. He is a great servant of God. He has a growing church. When he took the church, they bought land. They got a pretty good piece of property. And the auditorium was real small, but the church grew. He's a type that teaches his people. He does discipleship, and then he trains workers, and they have an hour training session before the service on Sunday night to prepare workers in the church. And they had an auditorium that would seat about 125. And pretty soon they filled it up on Sunday morning and started a second service. And after a little while, they started filling it up, the second service, and they went to a third service. And after they filled up the third service, they went to the fourth service. They started at 7:30 in the morning and went to 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And then they'd come back at 5 o'clock for a training service and 6 o'clock for a preaching on Sunday night. And he is producing workers, and he's one of our leading teachers there at the Bible school. His name is Raul Vargas, and he was on giving a testimony today. And God has given us some good people like that. He's given us some good teachers. The only North Americans that teach at the school is Gloria and I, and David and Tanya are the only ones, and all the rest of them, between 16 and 18 Peruvians are teachers. They're going on and getting their bachelor's degree and their master's, and one of them got his doctorate. It's been 3 years ago now. And they see the importance of preparing themselves well to teach and to prepare better workers for the ministry that's there. But as we said in the video, we've had over 550 graduates over the years that we have been there. We have at least 40 churches in Metropolitan Lima area that have students, graduates that are working in their churches. Some of them have as many as 8 or 10 graduates working in the churches. And then we have about 30 different provinces where our graduates are working in churches all over the country of Peru. And as I mentioned, we have eight graduates in 8 different countries around the world that are serving as missionaries, and it's a thrill to us for that. The flood that you saw, the seminary, we're around the Pan American Highway, and about 100 meters, 100 yards out behind the seminary is the Chion River. It's a shallow running river, and it's most of the water, we have most of the water when it's raining up in the Andes from about October, November until as late as April. And the river will fill up some, but it's never been a threat to us. The seminary's been there 55 years, and we've never had any problem with the river. But the 17th of March in 2017, something happened just up above us that sent the waters rushing off to our side of the river, the bank there, and it started washing away the bank. Next door to us is a great big service station, and it started in towards them about noon, and by 6 o'clock, it had washed away 100 yards of a cornfield and was knocking on their back wall. And by midnight that night, it had knocked down their wall, knocked down the back corner of our wall. The gardener's house was right there in the corner. If you could have seen part of his house out in the river in the video tonight, and and then the water came on into the property about 25 feet. It covered our well, and we were able to put up a barricade there of boulders and dirt and so forth. And it hit our chapel building. And when it hit our chapel building, the chapel building was such that it threw the water back into the river. So it only hit us, the service station, and the back corner of our property. And by the grace of God, the chapel building saved the rest of the seminary. When we built that chapel building 28 years ago, the builder that built it for us, one of the churches, had the custom of digging down the foundation until he got to rock or to gravel. And the foundation for that chapel was 6 feet deep, and it was solid. It was solid, and all the columns were 6 feet deep with concrete and steel on the bottom, and so it held up. When the water starts washing under the wall and under the other building, the 2-story building, it would just wash the foundation out from under it. But thankfully, the chapel held on, and it threw the water back into the river. But we had water rushing through the property for 2 weeks. Our people came from our churches, our pastors came, and we had people that stayed on the property 24 hours a day in case of emergency while we were working with that thing. And the first Saturday that we did that the flood came in, we had 15 pastors there. It was the second day of the flood. And all 15 of them thought that they were civil engineers, and all 15 of them knew what to do. And every 3 minutes, one told me what we needed to do. And after about 3 hours, I went in the house and hid for about 30 minutes. We had a front-end loader that was bringing in rocks. We were bringing in truckloads of boulders, 3, 4, 5 feet wide, and stacking them there. And every one of the pastors was telling them what to do and what not to do. And all of a sudden, the operator turned around and left with his bulldozer and went next door to the service station. And he had lined the boulders up along the edge of where the water was coming to. I wanted to put the boulders down in the water. And I went looking for him. And he says, well, I'll be back after a while. And that's the way they tell you that they're not coming back. I'll be back after a while. And they brought in some more sort of gravel material that they put up on these boulders. And what happened is more river came up, and it was the only reason it didn't wash more away is because those boulders were there where that operator had left them. In other words, I believe it was of the Lord that he got fed up with the pastors left, but it turned out to be a blessing. It would be something I'd have to show you sometime about it. But the Lord is good to us at the seminary. By His grace, we're producing good workers, and they have a vision of going and starting churches. All of our churches have their own mission program. Most all of them are on Faith Promise missions. They sponsor missionaries, and they have a program equal to what we have here, and they have a heart for it also. We've always been in camp ministry. In fact, I went to youth camp the first time when I was 14 years of age. I went back when I was 15, and I met a 13-year-old girl that was almost 14, she said, and she's here tonight. And her mother was at camp with her also. Yeah, her mother like to scared me to death. But anyway, so camp's been important to us all these years. When we got to Peru, we were involved in camp ministry, but we always had to rent someone else's camp, and we would have 4 weeks of camp, high school and then college, career age, children's camp and ladies camp, and that was all that we could do, and sometimes we'd have to have them in a couple of different places. And we began to pray and ask God to give us our own camp property. And I started looking for it, and I put out a plea. We received $12,000, and I put it in the bank and kept it, and we looked for a year, and we looked for 2 years. For right at 30 years, I looked for land from year to year. After a while, I couldn't even get anybody to go with me to look for a place, and I never found anything that I felt that we should buy. And we kept renting the other church's camp. Well, we were here in the States in 2010. And David and Tanya had the high school camp, and I called down there, and I caught Tanya out at the camp, and she said, "Dad, I didn't sleep all night long last night." And I said, "Well, Tanya, what's the matter?" And she says, "Well, the camp was built originally for 150 people, and they beefed it up to about 200, and we would take another 80 mattresses and tents up there, so we'd have enough space for all of our people." But she said, "Dad, there's 400 people here, and I don't know where they're going to sleep." And I was up all night trying to figure that out. Well, I'd already said, I'll let the next generation build the youth camp. I've looked for 30 years, and undoubtedly the Lord's not in this thing. And so I said, "Well, Tanya, when I get back to Peru, I'll look one more time." And so when we got back to Peru, and this pastor that was on the fellowship today, Raul, I got Raul, and we went to look for youth camp property up by the camp that we always rent from the regular Baptists there. And within 3 hours, we found the 2 lots that we have side by side. We found the owners. They were ready to sell. And within 2 weeks, we paid the $75,000 to buy a little over about 7.5 acres. And then we were broke. I had saved $12,000 for 30 years, and we still had it. And but the Lord provided. Bang, bang. When it's God's time, when God's in it, the rest of it shows up. And He has taught us that. But when it's His time. And so we started working on we tried to do everything legally, correctly, and we tried to get permission for a well from the Ministry of Agriculture, and that was a problem. We didn't have enough money, and so finally in 2016, the phone rang one day, and there was money. I had no idea what it was going to cost to build that youth camp, to tell you the truth. And the money started coming, and we have a lady that's been in our churches. She's an architect for about 25 years. A missionary led her to the Lord when she was a young lady, and she's been with us now for 27 years. She's a builder, and her husband's a builder, and she helped me draw the plans and lay out the camp. And we started building. Really, we started in October of 2017. After we started, built the front gate and started fencing it in, and we had the flood. And so we had to go and take care of the flood. We had to redo the septic system because of the flood. That was $70,000 there to rebuild the buildings that we've lost. We have not yet replaced our chapel, but we've replaced storage, the shops, the classroom on the second floor, and modern bathrooms we have. And we replaced all of that wall. And that wall has a 6-foot deep foundation foundation with rebar every 20 centimeters, every 8 to 10 inches. It should stand another flood someday. But anyway, we had to go do that, spent $70,000 there, and then we went back to building the camp. And we had it finally finished for January 2019. We were working at 7 o'clock the night before camp started. The first week of camp was high school, and we had 31 young people to receive the Lord the very first week that we had the camp there. And then others. The most fruitful camp as to professions of faith is the high school camp. And we get many workers out of that. But we had 31 people saved that very first week, and then many others through the week. The camp is not just youth camp, it's church camp. And we have retreats and camps for every age. If I had time tonight to tell you about when we had our first men's retreat last year. And my secretary's assistant, Kathy, grew up in a real rough family. 3 sisters, 4 brothers, and they would fist fight in the dining hall of their house. A really rough situation. But their father, many years ago, threatened to kill his wife if she didn't leave. And she took the last baby and left. And the father told the kids that she left them, abandoned them, didn't love them, and so forth. And they grew up thinking that. And they wound up living within a few blocks of the church that we started. Both families, him with his new family. And Kathy got saved. She's been on staff for 15 years now. But their father lived around the mother. Of course, the mother got saved early on, and she died with cancer. The father is still there with his other family, but one of the daughters took it on as a project to pray for him and do her best to win him to the Lord. And one of the brothers, took him to camp, to men's retreat. And David preached on Job praying for his children and making a sacrifice for him. And God touched his heart. God touched his heart, and he's saved now. He's been born again. And part of that is from going to camp. He went to camp, and the men going to camp, and we're grateful for that. The Lord has blessed that. And the camp cost so much money to build that I'm not even going to tell you how much we spent, because you'll say, where'd you get that money? It wasn't pennies from heaven. It came by the hundreds of thousands. And the Lord just did it. When it was time, he did it. And we're grateful. Now, we'd been praying for 30 years, and that might have had something to do with it also, as we see. But the Lord is gracious. He continues to help us, and he guides us and directs us, and we're grateful for that. But let me mention to one of our pastors, Jairo Torres, is a pastor in Iquitos, Portugal. Gloria and I went over for their 10th anniversary last October for Jairo's church there in the city of Iquitos. 20 years ago, one Saturday morning, the front gate bell rang at the seminary. It was a week before classes were to start, and I went out to open the gate, and there stood a slightly built young man. He had his sports bag in one hand and his Bible in his right hand. And he looked up to me. He says, "I'm Jairo, and I've come to study." I knew nothing about Jairo coming, but I said, "Well, come in." And because he didn't have airfare for the hour-and-a-half flight from the jungle city of Iquitos to Lima, he had to come by riverboat and by bus. It took him 5 days to get there. He came as far as he could on the river, crossed the Andes on the bus, and finally made it to the seminary. And so I told him the dorm rooms were not ready yet. I sent him out to the chapel to rest, to sleep a while. He slept for 2 hours, got up and went looking for a job. He only had enough money to eat for 2 weeks. And so he got out and started looking for a job. I gave him a job at the seminary. He was a good student, a very good student. And he wound up living with us at the seminary, not in my house, but at the seminary. His 4 years of study, and then 3 more years. He was there for 7 years. He married a pastor's daughter that was a graduate of the seminary. And when one of our graduates gets married there, of course, we help them what we can, but we don't buy them a wedding gift. We save up some money, save up a little bit of money that we can, and then the day of their wedding, at the wedding, we give them the money. They're usually broke by that time, okay? And we got to the church early for Jairo's wedding. He was ready. He was out on the sidewalk in front with his tie on, ready for the wedding. I walked over to him. I gave him the money that we had for him. He walked 3 doors up the street and paid for his wedding cake. And they brought the wedding cake down to the church. You know, how would you like to be waiting for your wedding cake 30 minutes before the service starts? But we went to Iquitos for their anniversary. There's 400,000 people in the city of Iquitos, and it's right on the Amazon River. Jairo rented a house and started a church, and the church began to grow. A few years later, he started a second church and was able to get land for that church. Then about 2 years ago, he was invited to start another church from a community, a large neighborhood, we can't call it a city, but a small community on the Amazon River, right on the banks of the Amazon River, 30 minutes down the Amazon. And when we went to Iquitos for his anniversary on Saturday, we took the members of the 2 city churches, or some of the members, the 30 minutes down the Amazon for a Saturday celebration at that church and for a baptismal service in the river. The boat we took to the church was public transportation down the Amazon. It cost us 90 cents a person to go on it. The boat, one of the last pictures was Jairo standing up inside of that boat, had some plastic up for sort of a roof. You may or may not noticed it. But it was a homemade looking boat. It had that plastic stuck up there to keep the rain out. And I began to look around for life jackets. And there were 5 life jackets stuck up in that plastic there. I counted, there's 29 people and there's 5 life jackets, you know. Yeah. And that's not living by faith. We call that something else there, and you live that way. And when the river traffic stays to the right, the Amazon is very wide there, and our boat went well on the right-hand side. It was October, and the rains are not starting, so the Amazon River was down. And the pilot, of course, he was out there every day. He knew the river like the back of his hand, but he would have to maneuver through some of the shallow water sandbars. And we got to a certain place. He was going slow, and all of a sudden, boom, we hit a sandbar. And most of these city people weren't used to that. And I looked around and I thought, where are the life jackets? And they had disappeared. I don't know who grabbed the first 5 of those life jackets. But we do plan to buy Jairo, his wife, and his 3 little girls life jackets when we get back there. But as we traveled on down the river a little bit, Jairo stood up and he said, let's sing. And they began to sing hymnals from the Baptist hymnal. And it just thrilled my heart. It just thrilled my heart. Here we are with people from 3 churches going down the Amazon River, going to a baptismal service, starting a new church, and we're singing praises to our Lord, singing songs that I grew up in Alabama singing for the glory of the Lord. And I thought, what a thrill. I would not change my life for anything in this world. The privilege that God has given to me. And I remember that day Jairo rang the doorbell, and he says, I'm Jairo. I've come to study. And Jairo made a decision. He trusted God. He believed his promises, and he gave his life to the Lord. And for 20 years, I've seen him grow in the Lord, grow in the grace of God. I've seen him turn many people unto righteousness. He has a good, dedicated wife. He has 3 little girls that sing specials in the church. He started 3 churches. The 3 churches have fellowship together. And he's already introduced us to some of his young people that'll be coming to Bible school next March. We've seen the ministry go full circle in the 20 years in the life of Jairo. We've seen it in many other Peruvians where they come, they prepare themselves to serve the Lord, they find a wife, and they go and they start a church, and they win people, they raise a family, and then they bring somebody else back to Bible school to start it over again. My privilege, our privilege, God's given me a great wife to accompany me and help us, and God has blessed us. And we appreciate your blessing us with your offerings and with your prayers, Pastor.
On the video that I mentioned and he mentioned as well, the missionary testimony from Africa gave a shout out to Jerry Piercy, thanking him for his ministry there. So that was a blessing. And I hope that the significance of what you've just heard doesn't just pass you by. And try to imagine as a young person leaving the United States with your family and then going to a country where you didn't know the language and raising 3 kids. And all of these churches that have been started, all of the graduates of the Bible College, and those pictures all over the country of Peru, there are churches there now because of those graduates. And then 8 families that have gone from Peru out to other parts of the world. And that's the plan working the way that it was designed. And there's a video I hope to show you soon that is on that list of things in the 4 hours if you spin that. But it shows how missions has gone from the United States out to other countries, but now there are missionaries coming from all those countries to all different parts of the world, and it's kind of like a spider web of people going all different places. What a great thing to know that the gospel is literally going around the world the way that God designed it, and the way the plan was when God gave to us the Great Commission. And that's what it's all about, us being faithful to the command that God has given us to let people know the good news of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so what you've witnessed is a history, a legacy of someone faithfully doing that throughout all of their life, and they're still doing it. They're still doing what God wants them to do, and they can't wait till He says home opens up and they can go back to Peru to do what God has called them to do. And we thank you for that. We thank you for your service. It's our honor to be in your presence tonight and to have you visit our church, and we love you. We love our missionaries, and thank you for representing us in Peru all these years so faithfully. I'm going to ask if you guys would make your way to the back, and